The House floor is where the action is, the finish line in sight. President Trump and Republicans on the cusp of a major victory on tax reform. Let's go outnumbered overtime. I'm Harris Faulkner. And to the floor. Republicans are confident they have the votes to meet their Christmas deadline on a sweeping overhaul of America's tax code. The House is expected to begin voting this hour. The Senate is expected to begin voting later this evening. House Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi blasted the bill as, quote, a bad deal, but House Speaker Paul Ryan says people will soon see the benefits in their wallets.
When we get this done, when people see their withholding improving, when they see the jobs occurring, when they see bigger paychecks, a fair tax system, a simpler tax code, that's what's going to produce the results. Results are going to make this popular.
This is the worst bill to ever come to the floor of the House. It's disgusting smash and grab. It's an all-out looting of America, the wholesale robbery of the middle class.
Well, we've been able to watch some of this closed circuit. Peter Ducey, live from Capitol Hill. It's pretty chippy right now on the House floor as Democrats are making some stands.
And Harris, the tax bill hasn't even been voted on in the House, the first big step today. But GOP leaders seem confident enough that it's going to pass that a lot of their talk has shifted away from policy and the ins and outs of this thing, because it can't really be changed, and toward perception. And these Republican leaders are arguing that the only reason constituents might not be excited about a transformed tax code is because they've been listening to pundits or Democrats who have been changing and cherry-picking, I should say, statistics.
The more people understand this bill, the more they're saying, oh, this is good stuff. This is offering tax relief to the very people that we propose to offer tax relief. So I'm very upbeat about this and look forward to debating this on the floor and moving forward and seeing it turned into law.
Even the Republicans who plan to vote against this tax reform measure because they're from states with high local taxes that can only be deducted up to $10,000 by this plan admit that it's probably going to be popular across the country. New York Congressman Peter King says he thinks this is going to be a win for the president nationally, just not in his district. But that's as Democrats are arguing right now, that the bill is going to be a winner for rich people and CEOs, and that's it.
So understand this. After this tax bill gives a tax cut to the wealthiest in this country, including Donald Trump and his family, when it gives a major tax giveaway to the wealthiest corporations in the world.
And we're here right now in the Will Rogers corridor. We've been watching lawmakers heading toward the House chamber, which is just over there, ahead of this vote that we expect to be in about a half an hour. Again, House Republican leadership very, very confident that they have the votes to pass this measure easily. Over on the Senate side, though, that's where things get a little bit closer. There are a maximum of 99 senators voting today because John McCain is in Arizona recovering from side effects from his brain cancer treatment. So they can only afford, Republicans there, one defection. And they think that they've got enough votes in case they lose one person. But again, if it does pass in the Senate, it's going to be a real squeaker.
Yeah, and Peter, real quickly, we should mention to everybody that some no's became yeses in recent days on the Senate side, and Republicans have felt like they can make up the deficit per anybody who might not be able to vote, namely Senator Bob Corker. We've seen some others come on board. Susan Collins saying that she's a yes, so that will make a difference too. Great to see you. Thank you very much. Boy, it's a big day, and one of the people voting yes in the House on tax reform is here. Republican Diane Black of Tennessee chairs the House Budget Committee. She crunches numbers for a living, and the Congresswoman also sits on the House's Chief Tax Writing Committee. Again, more numbers to crunch, but I just saw you were on the House floor, and you had a message. What was it?
I have a message for the American people that we are finally bringing them tax relief. And you know what, Harris, it feels so good. After 7 years, I've been here for 7 years and been on the Ways and Means Committee, and we have been working on this for 7 years for the American people. And this is a big win, especially for those in the middle income. And I'm excited to know that today is finally coming, that we're going to get this passed here in the House, pass it over to the Senate, and the President will be able to sign it and give the American people a big Christmas present.
So I'm looking at what you said. You said the critics have it wrong. We are cutting your taxes plain and simple. Benefits will be felt by all Americans for generations to come. To quote you, to you. I want to talk with you, though, about a little bit of the headwind that you had coming into today. And on the left side of the screen, just so everybody knows, this is playing out on the House floor. So as Speaker Paul Ryan steps up, we'll go to that live. But Congresswoman Black, you had some like Darrell Issa, Lee Zeldin of New York, some of those high tax districts and states, still saying that they will vote no today. In my count, you don't have enough for it to make a difference, but the messaging you do. So what do you say about that?
Well, I say that those states are going to have to look at what they're doing in their individual states because it doesn't represent all the rest of America. We've got about 4 or 5 states that are really very high tax states, and already it's very interesting that in their own local newspapers, they're acknowledging that they've got to take a look at what they're doing in their own state. Look, they're driving people out of their state. They're coming to Tennessee. We love it. We're getting about 100 people in the middle of Tennessee and Nashville that are moving in every day, and they're coming from these high tax states. So although we've tried to do as best we could to meet their needs, to leave that to allow them to be able to use their income or their property or their sales tax, at the same time we recognize we've got to look at the country as a whole.
And I know from talking with Representative Lee Zeldin and some others that, you know, particularly Darrell Issa of California, he's facing a contentious race. So you say all politics are local, so what he would have to do would be different probably than what you would have to do anyway. We are looking right now, though, at history. And you are a person that often gets talked about in circles for having found more places to cut and put those bills forth and said, look, I found $7.5 billion. I challenge you to find more. As you look at this in terms of the numbers and in terms of the history that today means, can you spell it out? And as soon as the House Speaker takes the floor, that will signal to us that the debate has moved on and that you're about to vote. So please, if you can, just answer my question.
Yes, look, I'm on the other side of this as well. I want to see us cut our spending. We are spending more than what we bring in every single year, and we're putting future generations into too much debt. And so this is a balance. As we see the economy grow, we have to be cognizant that we don't spend more than what we're bringing in every year. We don't increase the spending, in other words, even though the economy grows. And that's really where the balance is. And look, we've got to continue to talk about that topic as well. But for today, we're going to celebrate where we are. We're going to pass a monumental tax reform for the American people.
You know, you're going into your next, in the next 45 hours or 48 hours, you'll have to fight over the showdown to keep the government open. Can you put that into context of where we are right now and where you think that discussion will go?
Well, we cannot close the government down. That is one of the worst things we can do for the American people, for the economy, for their confidence in us here in Congress. And so we've got to get our work done. That is the next thing. You know, we'll celebrate today, but we also recognize that we have to have a continuing resolution before we leave here and to make sure that we keep the government open and running.
Yeah, and I know some of those spending ideas that you have been harvesting will come to play as well. I can see that. On the left side of the screen, Congresswoman, you are with us now for breaking news as we watch the House Majority Leader, Kevin McCarthy, making his remarks on the floor. Just some semantics for you. This really isn't a debate because the tax code is closed for any sort of changes. So these are the points that people are making. Tell me about kind of what the goal is with this and what, because you spoke on the floor, and how long you have to make your comments.
Well, we usually get anywhere between 2 and 3 minutes to make our comments, and then you have to stop at the end of that time. Whoever the Speaker Pro Tem is will make sure that you only have that much time. But the idea is to be concise and to make sure whatever your message is done in a very concise way so that the American people can see what we believe is really a good thing for them. And then, of course, our colleagues on the other side of the aisle will have their comments too. I just encourage people to look at the truth of the matter and not the hyperbole that's coming out, because that's really a shame.
What is the mood on the House floor right now? Because I'm reading what some of the Democrats have been saying. It got pretty contentious at times. What is the mood?
Look, the mood is really good on the floor. We know that the direction we're going, and we look back at history, Harris. I mean, it's not something that we're doing just without a historical precedence. It was a historical precedence back at the time of Kennedy, when we saw that tax reform was done, the cutting of taxes and what it did to the economy. Again, during Reagan, and a little bit of that also during the time of Clinton. And so we know that this works. This isn't something that we're just guessing at it. And we're excited about that because the American American people need our help, and the economy needs our help to come out of the doldrums that we've been in for far too long.
All right, I want to give people a flavor of what's gone on. Congressman Lewis, Democrat of Georgia, said, when this bill comes, the chicken will come home to roost. You followed, and I have the complete printout. 45 seconds later, you made your comments. What were you thinking?
Well, I'm thinking the American people are going to be the ones to be the judge at the end of the day. When they start getting that paycheck as soon as February, their first paycheck then in February, we will see a difference. They will see a difference. And then the truth of the matter will come out. And I'm confident that that is what it's going to be. I'm excited that this is a Christmas present for the American people. And so I just say to people that the proof is in the pudding, and the pudding will be when it comes this upcoming year when we see the economy growing and more money in people's pockets.
February, you said. They're going to open up those paychecks. And today,
Yes.
this day in December, you are going to go vote. And I know that's coming up shortly. So, Congresswoman Diane Black, thank you very much for joining us. Merry Christmas.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having us.
All right, so we are going to keep a close eye now on the left side of your screen. And what we're able to do is then pop up my next guest on the big developments on Capitol Hill, Rachel Bade, congressional reporter for Politico. Rachel, what are you seeing and hearing behind the scenes? And I just want to warn that if House Speaker Paul Ryan walks up, we go away and we take that live. Take it away.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I would expect nothing less. It's a big moment for Speaker Paul Ryan and for President Trump and Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. They are about to send the Oval Office, the president's first major legislative win since Inauguration Day. And I can't emphasize how big this is. If you think about it, the last tax overhaul was in 1986. There's a reason people have been talking about doing this for years but have been unable to do so, and that's because it's very tough and can be very divisive. But Republicans really unified on this. They stood strong after failing to repeal Obamacare, and this is a big day for them. This allows Speaker Paul Ryan to check off his to-do list, one of the biggest things he's wanted to do in life, and that is reform the tax code. But it also allows Majority Leader Mitch McConnell to sort of win more points with the base after he failed on Obamacare repeal. The one thing I will tell you to watch, though, is that even though there's a lot of jubilation right now, coming out of a private conference meeting a few minutes ago, I did hear some consternation from House Republicans because they are worried about getting rolled on spending in a couple of days. There's going to be this big vote to prop up Obamacare that is being supported in the Senate, and a lot of House conservatives are not happy about it and really pushing Ryan to fight back against that.
You know, so what's interesting about what you're saying, Rachel, is, and I was just talking with Congresswoman Black about this, you know, when you have these conversations and these battles so close, within 48 hours of each other, the deadlines, it gets very complicated on what you give on. We've heard things about DACA, immigration. You said, in the way that you put it, if they get rolled on spending, I mean, you do have to take away some of what you'd want to keep, even though that conversation is not necessarily part of this negotiation over tax reform.
Right. That's exactly right. And some Republicans are very much good with looking at what they're doing today, feeling great about it, and trying to sort of push off the next couple of days in the back of their minds. But some Republicans are having trouble with that. For instance, I was talking to Warren Davidson just a few hours ago, who replaced John Boehner when John Boehner was ousted. He's a conservative in the Freedom Caucus, and he's really excited about tax reform, but he's really concerned as well as being rolled on spending. Now, the one thing I will say about this is that it sounds like Republicans and Democrats are going to kick the big kahuna spending deal into January, and as well as a immigration deal that could really upset the base. So that would give Republicans a couple of weeks to go home over Christmas, really campaign and message their tax bill, and sort of go from there, and I guess take the medicine as it goes down a little later down the road. So.
Yeah, you know, I mentioned this on Outnumbered last hour. This is a real opportunity for Democrats, though, because Republicans on the issue of DACA have at least publicly started to kind of move their position a little bit. They're going to look at keeping the core family together in terms of moving ahead down the road beyond the dreamer situation that we have right now. And that is moving the conversation and looking at chain migration in that way. Like, keep everybody together here, but we're going to take a look at as you fan out those families who might not come in on anything other than merit. So Democrats could have a situation where they maybe not meet in the middle, but have some areas where they could agree.
Yeah. Immigration very much, I would say, is dividing both parties. There are Democrats who I think are willing to give a little in terms of what Republicans would need to keep DACA going. And that is something like, building the border security. I think when it comes to enforcement agents and ending chain migration, that gets a little tougher for some Democrats. And there are Democrats who are looking at this politically and saying, why should we give on this when if DACA explodes and Dreamers are pushed out of the country, people are going to blame the president for this. So they don't want to, compromise in that way. But then some Democrats do and are actually thinking we got to do something about this population of youngsters that came here through no fault of their own. Similarly, Republicans are divided on how much they are willing to give for Democrats in order to get this fixed. Some of them are okay with a path to citizenship. Others say no way. Yeah. And if they don't see anything short of a wall and to chain migration and big enforcement, they can't vote for it.
And for all of those reasons, you hear Republicans saying, let's push this off and we have more time and not do it so quickly. Real quickly, I want to get back to what's happening on the left side of the screen. It is 1:16 almost on the East Coast. We are expecting to see in the next 15 minutes, if not sooner, the Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan. He will take the floor. And once that happens and this debate ends and they vote, Rachel, this is a huge moment. Any last minute glitches that we should expect or not expect, take it away.
I just made a couple of calls to some conservatives who I know were unhappy about the spending strategy when they came out of a closed-door meeting a couple of hours ago. And the reason I did that is because just a couple of weeks ago, this same group of conservatives gave Republicans and President Trump a scare when they almost voted against going to conference and appointing conferees for this tax bill. So there's a question about would they ever hold up the tax bill to get what they want on spending and get Republican leadership to take a harder line? From what I'm hearing, the answer is no. They want this tax bill to pass. And so I think Republican leadership is in the clear.
All right. So that's a big check. Yeah, because you also had on the issue of deducting state and local taxes, you had ISA, you had Zeldin and several others that knew they were 20 when they were voting on reconciliation and almost didn't get to the point where they are now. Now they have folded away and they're just a handful. Rachel Bade of Politico, thank you very much as you watch this moment in history with us. We appreciate it. Okay, let's go back to the House floor. And this is debate, but it is not debate that can actually touch the text of the tax bill. This is debate that lets people make a 3-minute statement. Remember, we learned that from Congresswoman Diane Black this hour. She had her 3 minutes on the floor. And yes, it has been contentious, particularly among Democrats who are against this bill for a whole host of reasons, and they are making those known. And then you've got Republicans that can do a rebuttal if they'd like or make strong statements about what they believe are great about this tax reform bill. The first of its size, if not greater, since 1986 under Ronald Reagan. We are watching this play out. Congressional Republicans are prepared to pass tax cuts on a scale that the nation has not seen in decades. The House is set to vote in a matter of minutes, with the Senate ready to go at sometime, maybe the 9 o'clock hour Eastern tonight. We don't have details on that yet, but that was one number. It's all setting the table for President Trump's first major legislative victory. Also, here's what we're watching. The FBI's second in command is set to testify to lawmakers in less than an hour from now. Concerns are growing about possible bias within the FBI and the special counsel's team. We'll have reaction from a former top official inside the Trump campaign. Stay close. Fox's alert Deputy FBI Director Andrew McCabe is expected to go before the House Intelligence Committee less than an hour from now. He'll be testifying behind closed doors. Lawmakers are expected to ask him about potential bias at the agency and on special counsel Robert Mueller's team. He'll likely be asked about top FBI agent who exchanged anti-Trump text messages with a colleague, a woman he was having an affair with, and whether the agency used the Trump dossier to launch its Russia investigation. Congressman Trey Gowdy is on that committee.
Andrew McCabe cuts across every facet of every investigation in 2016 that your viewers are interested in, from Secretary Clinton's email to the investigation into the Trump campaign. He's the deputy director of the FBI. So there are a ton of questions. The meeting between Agent Strzok and Lisa Page in, quote, Andy's office. We need to make sure that was Andy McCabe. And if they were coming up with a, quote, insurance policy in case Donald Trump won, that is devastating, and we're going to explore that.
Let's bring in former deputy director for the Trump campaign and New York Times bestselling author of Let Trump Be Trump, David Bossie is here. David, great to see you today. First question. So behind closed doors, not like one of those public hearings where, it's pomp and circumstance a lot of times, are we getting close to any answers?
Well, I think today's a big day for McCabe. This is going to be some tough questioning. I think he's going to get tough questioning from both sides of the aisle. But I think Trey Gowdy's exactly right. There's some explosive material in these emails. Harris, I think I served as the chief investigator for this committee, and I think that there's so much here in this investigation. The oversight that Congress has to do for the American people to regain the trust of the FBI. It has to happen. The FBI is a tremendous institution, and we shouldn't let it be ruined by a couple of bad apples.
Wow. So you just dropped the mic on this whole thing. You were the chief investigator for this committee, so you're the perfect person to ask then about how you go forward with this investigation if people are looking at it saying that it's tainted.
Yeah, you have to look at the entire group of people. You have to look at all the entire chain from McCabe, the Deputy Attorney General, all of the agents within the Mueller investigation, and all of the people that Mueller picked. If we're going to look at whether there's a tainted investigation, I think you have to do the whole thing, and you can't just you look at what Mueller's doing. He's looking at a broad scope, right? It's the same thing in Congress. You have an oversight responsibility, and you have to take it seriously. And so you have to go where the leads take you. I think whoever Andy is, what Trey Gowdy is talking about is very important. We have to make sure if that's Andy McCabe or is it someone else, and then you follow those leads where they go. This is an important thing for the American people to regain the trust. Because look, this guy Strzok, he's now been fired from the investigation, but he's still at the FBI. Right. And now he's at the HR department at the FBI. So people like me who worry about these deep state operatives around the government have to worry about him hiring more bad FBI agents, right? That's what the American people think. He's in the HR department. He's trying to hire more agents. What is that about? So we need to make sure that the integrity of the FBI is the first and foremost thing that comes out of this investigation.
Well, that's an interesting point that you're making about where they positioned him next in the Human Resources Department. We've spent upwards of $7.5 million as taxpayers on this investigation already.
I think that's only with the Mueller investigation.
Right,
I think
right. Just with the Mueller investigation.
But so, Harris, if you add the House and Senate, multiple committees, over 18 months, we're dealing in $15 or $20 million of taxpayer dollars.
I'm going to jump back in with my question.
I'm sorry.
So you spent no. It's good to get all that information out. So to add that into the color of all of this, how much we've spent. Do you just want to get to the bottom of this? Let this Mueller investigation finish. Can't you do both?
Absolutely.
Can't you look at what has happened with the anti-Trump dossier and the hiring of people who potentially have bias that we've seen play out in those anti-Trump messages? And can't you also let Christopher Wray over at the FBI, a man who was put into position since President Trump has been in office, can't you let Mueller's investigation finish? Because you don't know where it could be, but if he finds nothing, you get to move on, and right off into the sunset away from all of this. You will have spent a lot of our money, but you'll spend a lot more starting over.
These are not mutually exclusive. You're exactly right. Both things need to happen on a parallel track. Both investigations can be completed and very quickly. Look, the Mueller investigation has been going on a long time, and before that, DOJ. So they need to be getting to the end of it, and that's another congressional oversight aspect of making sure there's a timeline and accountability for that investigation. But I think that, come early part of next year, they're going to have to, they'll come to a fork in the road of which direction they're going to go, and I think that that's important. And then on the other hand, you have the congressional oversight aspect, and that should be that should take 60, 90, 120 days, and we should be done with that by the end of the winter.
David Bossie, Let Trump Be Trump. That's the name of the book. Thank you, sir. Good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
We have a tax vote coming up. We're going to witness history. You and me right here, right next to the screen, as the House gets set to vote on a sweeping tax reform bill. Here we are together, setting up the Trump administration's first major legislative win. You're looking at the White House now. After the bill's anticipated passage in the House, it will be the Senate's turn. We understand that'll happen tonight. And then we'll talk with one senator who was initially a holdout, a no, but now a yes. That's coming up. What changed his mind? Stay close. We know we are getting close to tax reform and the vote. Let's take a look at the floor. House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi is speaking on the floor right now as House lawmakers are gearing up to vote on tax reform at any minute. Senators will likely get to cast their ballots tonight on the Senate side. We expect both chambers to pass the legislation with ample support for Republicans, giving President Trump his first major legislative victory. My next guest was initially a holdout on the GOP tax bill, but is now a yes after securing further tax relief for so-called pass-through businesses, which don't pay corporate taxes but pass their tax burden to their owners. Republican Senator Steve Daines joins me now from Capitol Hill. So I know you were happy. We talked during the commercial break, but this was important to you and Senator Johnson of Wisconsin. What did you get?
Well, Harris, I spent 28 years in the private sector before I came to Capitol Hill. The fight that we had over this tax bill was ensure we got tax relief for our Main Street businesses, the small businesses across America. They represent 55% of the private sector jobs are these Main Street businesses. That was what we changed in this tax bill. They're now going to see a very nice tax cut that's going to help push wages up, grow the economy, and put more dollars in the pockets of hardworking Americans.
Is there a dollar point that kicks in? Just so people who are watching today, sometimes they'll get these little nuggets and it's helpful.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's something that's from top to bottom in the tax code for these small businesses. And that's so important. I grew up, I'm the son of a contractor in Montana. Those are the kind of businesses that are going to see the tax relief, better tax relief. I fought for an additional $100 billion of tax relief. And you know what, Harris? It's time to take these dollars. They're sitting in Washington, D.C., where you have some of the most affluent counties in America right here. It's time to take those dollars. In Montana's case, it's $800 million a year we're taking from Washington, D.C. and sending it back home to Montana, put in the pockets of hardworking Montanans.
I'm curious because we've been getting notes all day on when the Senate side might be voting for this tonight. And we, of course, are waiting the House vote on the tax bill. We're watching former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi on the floor making her 3-minute argument or statements. What do you think tonight looks like?
Well, Harris, I literally just came out of lunch with Vice President Pence to come do this interview.
Yeah, we saw him walk in.
I'm going to head back and finish up lunch with him here right after we're done. But here's what's going to happen tonight. The House is going to be voting on it imminently. In fact, I'm standing just 100 feet away from the House. I think you'll see them pass that in the next 30 to 60 minutes. Then it goes to the Senate. I would expect we'll see passage in the Senate, a unanimous vote from the Republicans. Every Republican is going to be yes on this bill tonight, sometime this evening, and then we'll send it to the president's desk.
Wow, unanimous in the Senate.
It'll be, and Vice President Pence, by the way, told us he's going to preside tonight over that very important vote. I don't think we're going to need his vote tonight, but he'll be presiding. It's a historic moment. 31 years ago since we had tax reform, tax relief, back to President Ronald Reagan in 1986.
Well, and rare that you're unanimous on much, I would imagine.
It's rare that we're unanimous, but it'll be that way, and that's because it's such a great bill. This is a tremendous Christmas present for the American people. It's a great way to end the year.
All right, having been a holdout, and I've wanted to ask people like, Jeff Flake, and some people I've had some conversations with, what was it like as you sat down with your colleagues? Was it a lot of pressure? What were these conversations like? Because you are on the verge of doing something historic, and sometimes people put their name in the bin as a no just so they can. But what were those conversations like? Just the texture of them.
Well, I was having these conversations actually for several months, and this is how we make a good bill much better. And that was the discussion that we had. It was bringing the voice of the small businesses. The large businesses have presence in Washington, D.C. The small businesses oftentimes don't. So Ron Johnson and I both come from those kind of businesses. We want to bring that voice to the table because I'll tell you what, small businesses, they don't have compliance departments and groups out there doing influence on policy, on legislation. We were the voice of the small business person, the Main Street businesses. And I tell you what, the bill is a lot better as we got some great changes to it because that is the engine of this economy. You look at since the recession of 2007-8, 2/3 of the new jobs created in this recovery have come from these Main Street businesses. This is very important to get this economy going forward. and provide tax relief for all Americans.
You know, it's important to hear you say that because people look at the 25,000, 24,000 mark on the Dow and the 70 records that have been broken. You know, President Trump's administration has seen so much success on Wall Street. But when you talk about Main Street and the driver in the economy in terms of, you know, I got my first job at a small business. So when you talk about that, it doesn't get mentioned as much in terms of this bill. So it's interesting to hear you talk. In the end, any Democrats who even winked a discussion point or support? I know that they have been very strong, some of them, in their complaint that they didn't get to put their word in enough on this bill.
I'll tell you what, Harris, we had over 70 hearings over years and years, really, on tax policy. Plenty of opportunities to amend, plenty of opportunities to come on board this tax bill. Unfortunately, it looks like every Democrat's going to vote no. I think they're making a big mistake because here's what you're going to see. You're going to see more dollars in paychecks next year. You're going to see this economy continue to grow. The outcome is going to be a very, very good thing. And they're going to regret the fact that this moment in time, this historic moment, 31 years since the last time we've cut taxes, they're opposing us in this. I think they're making a mistake.
Yeah, you know, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but sometimes I call it in my household with my kids, you're running against success when you show somebody how to do something and they are against it until they actually see it. Last word from you.
Well, I'll tell you, this is a Christmas gift for the American people. And I tell you, most Montanans will tell me they don't need D.C. to have more money. There is a spending problem here. It's not a revenue problem. It's time to give a Christmas gift to the American people. We're going to cut their taxes. We're going to increase wages next year. This is a great way to end the year. It's a Merry Christmas to the American people.
All right, your next fight is showdown over spending. And you know, as Republicans, Americans will be looking in your direction to cut some things, and that has to happen in the short little while to keep the government running. Whether it happens at the end of this week, you get an extension, it happens in January. So we look forward to covering that as it happens. Senator Daines of the great state of Montana, voting on taxes today. Sir, thank you.
Thanks, Harris.
All right, let's look. We have Kevin Brady, the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, on the floor of the House right now. We moments ago saw the former Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, on the House floor. Everybody gets 3 minutes, we've been told by Congressman Diane Black, who had walked off the floor to come talk to us on overtime, and we got to hear what she said. This has been a back and forth, a debate. Americans get to see this play out. And then the debate stops. We see the House Speaker Paul Ryan step up moments from now. He'll make his comments, and then they vote. Also today, the president is saying that America's interests are his top priority after outlining the nation's national security strategy yesterday. But how is that being received on the global stage? And should that even make a difference? What people think of making America great again or going first? Does it matter what the rest of the world says? The Power Panel is here. Stay close. The action continues on the U.S. House floor right now. This is the Democrat ranking member of the House Ways and Means, Richard Neal. He's about almost finished. They only get 3 minutes or so. So he's toward the end of his comments, his debate. Now, here's what I can tell you that's happening inside the House right now. Speaker Paul Ryan is in the House, as they say. He's seated close by. We are awaiting now his comments on the House floor. The House debate will wrap up. We'll hear from the House Speaker, and then the voting begins. Now, you just heard Senator Daines of Montana, who says, I'm standing right outside the door. I mean, even the senators are watching this very closely, what's happening in the House right now. They've got an ear to the wall, so to speak, because, as you heard Senator Daines, they feel like they have the votes tonight. So you could hear some jubilation coming out of the House and in the hallway as this thing rolls out. But in the meantime, we can tell you that this particular Democrat is echoing some others who have great exception, and we'll talk about it more now with the panel, some of the ideas and things that are going on. And will that mood, will that color then the government showdown conversation that has to happen in the next 48 hours or so? Right now, tax reform on the brink. Let's bring it to the Power Panel. Richard Fowler, radio talk show host and Fox News contributor. Patrick Griffin, former media consultant to 4 Republican presidential campaigns. This is an exciting day for you.
This is a very exciting day. This is, more importantly, Harris, an exciting day for President Trump. Look, the Democrats are very, very upset about this. Why? Because the Republicans will have a win on the board legislatively. This is a campaign promise the president and Republicans said they would make sure happened. It's going to happen. This changes a lot of things for Donald Trump and the dynamic of his administration so far. Very, very important, especially as we look at economic news. It's a very good narrative to go forward with.
How, Richard, should Democrats be positioning themselves after these votes pass? And they are expected to pass both the House and Senate tonight. Nothing's happened yet, but they're expected.
This is a win for Donald Trump, and I think this is a big loss for the middle class. And I think that is the move that is echoing America, right? This bill is horribly unpopular with the American people. Every poll says it's unpopular. So while this is a legislative victory for the president and it's a big win for the speaker, he's been trying to get tax reform done first since he's been in the House, this bill doesn't work for all Americans, because if you're a middle-class family in Livingston, New Jersey, this bill is going to raise your taxes. If you're a middle-class family in Chicago, Illinois, this bill is going to raise your taxes.
You know what the timing of this is? Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan. Let's watch House floor.
The members and the staff of the Ways and Means Committee for all of their hard work in putting this bill together. I want to thank them for this. I want to personally thank one of my predecessors from the Ways and Means Committee who helped lay the foundation to get us to where we are today, and that is Dave Camp. Dave Camp did a lot to help us get to where we are. I want to, most of all, commend and express my profound admiration to the architect of this measure, Chairman Kevin Brady. His endless patience and his persistence and his great demeanor have seen this through and gotten us to where we are today. My colleagues, this is a day I've been looking forward to for a long time. We are about to achieve some really big things. Things that the cynics have scoffed at for years, decades even. Ideas that have been worked on for so long to help hardworking Americans who have been left behind for too long. Today, we are giving the people of this country their money back. This is their money after all. Mr. Chairman, or Speaker of the House is not in order.
The chair notes a contravention of the law and against the rules of the House. The Sergeant at Arms will identify the person or persons responsible and have them escorted from the House chamber before proceedings will resume.
All right, so what we're watching there, Sergeant of Arms has been called in to handle a heckler in the gallery. And so now, as soon as the Speaker resumes his speech, we'll go back. He's taken to the House floor just before they're set to vote, historically, on tax reform. So as this is played out, you see him smiling there, waiting for the Sergeant of Arms to clear the way here. Patrick Griffin is alongside you, said this happens sometimes.
Yeah, another satisfied customer, Harris, as we like to say.
Oh, my goodness.
It does happen sometimes.
Yeah. All right. So as we watch this play out, let's dip back in and see what's happening. Nope, we're not ready to talk yet. So, you know, as things go, when you're about to make history, sometimes people have an exception to that, and hecklers step in. Here we go. The House Speaker resumes.
I'm just saying. As I was saying, Mr. Speaker, today we're giving the people their money back. The bottom line here is the typical family making the median income in America will get a $2,059 tax cut next year alone. What this is real relief for families who are living out their paycheck to paycheck, struggling to make ends meet. You know, they hear about the economy getting better. They turn on the TV.